In a change to our normal format, Day 4 would see us driving a short loop, visiting 5 castles that were all located near to our camp. This is the Retrolab Scottish Borders Adventure. The first leg of the day would see us travelling 25 miles along the B709 to get to Crichton Castle. Crichton Castle is a ruined tower house that was first built in the late 14th century for the Crichton family and can be found near the village of Crichton in Midlothian, overlooking the River Tyne. Crichton Castle consists of 3 towers and another building which are connected to form an inner courtyard. The 14th century tower lies at the east of the castle, with one tower being added in the early 15th century to the south and another 2 towers being added in the southwest, along with the final building in the west in the late 15th century as the Crichton family grew in power. But the family fell from favour in 1484 and the castle was forfeited to the Hepburns of Hailes in 1488, who became known as the Earls of Bothwell. The Bothwells were accused of witchcraft and the castle was given to Francis Stewart, who was the first cousin of King James VI of Scotland, in 1567. In the 1580s, Francis Stewart, now the 5th Earl of Bothwell, designed and had constructed an ornate facade in the inner courtyard that was inspired by his travels to Italy, most notably the Palazzo del Diamanti in Ferrara in a style known as diamond rustication. The initials of Francis and his wife Margaret Douglas can still be found on the courtyard walls, along with an anchor which signified Stuart's position as the Lord High Admiral of Scotland. Crichton Castle is also notable as featuring Scotland's first modern-style staircase with landings, known at the time as Scale-and-Platt stairs. Francis Stewart was charged with treason in 1589 after engaging in an armed uprising and plotting to kidnap the king, and the castle fell into disrepair. The ruins are now in the care of Historic Environment Scotland. The next leg of our journey saw us driving 18 miles along the A6093 to get to our second stop of the day, Hailes Castle. Hailes Castle is one of Scotland's oldest stone castles and can be found in East Lothian, strategically placed overlooking the Scottish River Tyne and on the route to Edinburgh. The castle was founded as a fortified tower house by the de Gourlay family in the early 1200s, but the family supported the English in the Scottish Wars of Independence, which ran from 1296 to 1357, so their land and castle were forfeited by order of the Scottish Crown to the Hepburn family, headed by Sir Adam de Hepburn, when the wars were over. Sir Patrick Hepburn commissioned the construction of a tower that was at least 4 stories tall to the west of the original tower house, and a smaller tower to the east to form the long north range that overlooks the River Tyne. As it currently stands, the castle features a 13th century curtain wall with a 14th century keep and further extensions which are added in the 15th and 16th century, such as a chapel, bakehouse and brewhouse. A short drive of only 9 miles would get us to our third castle of the day, the awesome Tantallon Castle. Tantallon Castle is a partially ruined fortress that can be found on the East Lothian coast and overlooks the Firth of Forth. The castle was built in the mid-14th century and was the last medieval curtain wall castle to be constructed in Scotland. Tantallon Castle consists of a single curtain wall which is over 49 feet high, nearly 12 feet thick, around 300 feet long, and was constructed using locally sourced red sandstone. The wall blocked off a headland which was naturally protected on 3 sides by cliffs and the sea, so it only required small defensive walls. There were towers at each end of the main curtain wall and a heavily fortified gatehouse in the centre, all of which provided residential accommodation. The northwest tower was used as the Lord's private residence and known as the Douglas Tower. It was 7 stories tall, 39 feet across, and circular in design. The castle was constructed on behalf of William Douglas, the first Earl of Douglas, in the mid-14th century, and remained under control of his descendants for most of its history, despite being attacked numerous times. It was besieged by King James IV in 1491 and King James V in 1528 when it was extensively damaged. In 1639, Tantallon Castle was attacked during the First Bishops' War and again during Oliver Cromwell's invasion of Scotland in 1651, when it was once more severely damaged and subsequently abandoned. The castle was sold in 1699 to Hugh Dalrymple, the Lord of North Berwick, by the Marquis of Douglas, and in 1924 the castle was handed over to the UK Government's Office of Works by Dalrymple's descendant, Sir Hugh Hamilton Dalrymple, and is now in the care of Historic Scotland as a scheduled ancient monument. After a 43-mile drive down the A1 and the B6355, the fourth stop of the day saw us visiting Greenknowe Tower. Greenknowe Tower was built in 1581 on behalf of James Seton and is an example of a later tower house which was built more as a place of residence than a defensible fortress. It can be found near the village of Gordon in the Scottish borders. It is an L-plan tower that is 4 stories tall and has walls that are 4 feet thick and of rubble construction, made using local basalt with red sandstone for detailing. The initials of James Seton, his wife Janet Edmonstone, and the date of the tower's construction can be found inscribed above the door to the tower. In the 17th century, the tower was sold to the Pringles of Stichill, who made additions to the building and enlarged the windows to suit the less dangerous times. The tower once featured ornate gardens to the west, although no traces of these remain today. The foundations of an outbuilding can be found to the north-east of the tower. The castle was occupied until the mid-19th century, was passed into state care in 1937 following restoration works, and is now a scheduled ancient monument under the care of Historic Scotland. The fifth and final stop of the day would see us visiting Smailholm Tower, which can be found a mere 8 miles from our previous stop. Smailholm Tower can be found on a rocky outcrop of Lady Hill near the town of Kelso in the Scottish borders. It was originally built in the late 15th or early 16th century by the Pringle family as a peel tower designed to withstand attacks from English raids. The tower is 4 stories tall and features walls built from basalt rubble that are 8 feet thick. The tower was attacked by English soldiers in 1543, 1544, 1546 and 1640. Sometime after 1640, the tower was obtained by the Scots of Harden, who rebuilt and extended the tower, adding a hall house, a second kitchen and a small chapel, the ruins of which can all be found within the stone barmkin wall. The Scots of Harden were ancestors of Sir Walter Scott, who frequently visited the tower when he was a boy. Smailholm Tower inspired Walter Scott and provided the setting for Scott's ballad The Eve of St John, and also appears in his poem Marmion. As a result of Scott's poetry, his uncle restored the tower, which had fallen into disrepair in the 18th century, making it safe around 1800. The renowned artist J.M.W. Turner sketched Smailholm Tower when he visited with Scott later in the novelist's life. Smailholm Tower was handed over to state care in 1950 by the Earl of Ellesmere and was restored in the 1980s. The tower now operates as a museum, featuring an extensive array of model people that illustrate the history of Smailholm and the stories of Sir Walter Scott. 100 metres to the southeast you can find evidence of a much older settlement, probably dating from the 1st millennium BC. The final leg of our loop saw us driving 28 miles back to our camp near Peebles along the B6360 and A72. The driving aspect of this journey wasn't that great, so day 4 of the Scottish Borders adventure only got a score of 51.5 points. This puts the Day of Castles into 6th place on our adventure leaderboard, which makes stage 6 from Cavelock Castle to Peebles the best driving route in the Scottish Borders area. Let us know if you know of any better roads in the comments. So at the end of the Scottish Borders adventure, the Col de la Bonnette still stands at the top of our overall leaderboard. Will we ever find a better road? Subscribe to our channel and follow the continuing adventures of the Retro Lab to find out. Thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss another episode of the Retro Lab Scottish Borders adventure.